Hello, my name is Rania, and in this video we'll go over cellular respiration, steps involved in generating ATP, NADH, or FADH2. So during cellular respiration, a glucose molecule is gradually broken down into carbon dioxide and water, and along the way, some ATP is produced directly in the reactions that transform glucose. Much more ATP, however, is produced later in a process called oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative phosphorylation is powered by the movement of electrons through the electron transport chain, which is a series of protons embedded in the inner membrane of the mitochondrion. These electrons come originally from glucose and are shuttled to the electron transport chain by electron carriers NAD+ and FAD, which become NADH and FADH2 when they gain electrons. And there are 4 stages of cellular respiration, and the first one is glycolysis. In glycolysis, glucose, a 6-carbon sugar, undergoes a series of chemical transformations, and in the end it gets converted into 2 molecules of pyruvate, a 3-carbon organic molecule, and in these reactions, ATP is made and NAD+ is converted to NADH. Glycolysis takes place in the cytosol of a cell, and it can be broken down into 2 main phases, the energy requiring phase and the energy releasing phase. And at the end of glycolysis, 2 ATP, 2 NADH, and 2 pyruvate molecules are attained. Our second stage is pyruvate oxidation. Each pyruvate from glycolysis goes into the mitochondrial matrix. There, it's converted into a 2-carbon molecule bound to coenzyme A, known as acetyl-CoA. Carbon dioxide is released and NADH is generated. At the end of glycolysis, 2 pyruvate molecules are present that still contain lots of extractable energy. Pyruvate oxidation is the next step in capturing the remaining energy in the form of ATP, although no ATP is made directly during pyruvate oxidation. Pyruvate is produced by glycolysis in the cytoplasm, but pyruvate oxidation takes place in the mitochondrial matrix in eukaryotes. So before the chemical reactions can begin, pyruvate must enter the mitochondrion, crossing its inner membrane and arriving at the matrix. And at the end, 2 NADH are generated from NAD+. And our third stage is the citric acid cycle. The acetyl-CoA made in the last step combines with a 4-carbon molecule and goes through a cycle of reactions, ultimately regenerating the 4-carbon starting molecule. ATP, NADH, and FADH2 are produced and carbon dioxide is released. The citric acid cycle doesn't produce much ATP directly. However, it can make a lot of ATP indirectly by the way of the NADH and FADH2 it generates. These electron carriers will connect with the last portion of cellular respiration, depositing their electrons into the electron transport chain to drive synthesis of ATP molecules through oxidative phosphorylation, which is our fourth stage. The NADH and FADH2 made in other steps deposit their electrons in the electron transport chain, turning back into their empty forms, NAD+ and FAD. As electrons move down the chain, energy is released and used to pump protons out of the matrix, forming a gradient, and protons flow back into the matrix through an enzyme called ATP synthase, making ATP. At the end of the electron transport chain, oxygen accepts electrons and takes up protons to form water. And the electron transport chain is a series of proteins and organic molecules found in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. Electrons are passed from one member of the transport chain to another in a series of redox reactions. Energy released in these reactions is captured as a proton gradient, which is then used to make ATP in a process called chemiosmosis. Together, the electron transport chain and chemiosmosis make up oxidative phosphorylation. And we have 26 ATP, 10 NADH, and 2 FADH2 produced at the end of oxidative phosphorylation. And this takes us to our final calculation. So during glycolysis, as we can see up top, we lose 2 ATPs during phosphorylation of glucose and phosphorylation of fructose 6-phosphate. And I also want to go over the oxidative phosphorylation part and just break down where I got the 26 ATPs. So 2 molecules of NADH are formed in glycolysis. Each yields 1.5 molecules of ATP, so that gives us 3 ATPs. 2 molecules of NADH are formed in the oxidative decarboxylation of pyruvate. Each yields 2.5 molecules of ATP, which gives us 5, so that's 8 so far. And 2 molecules of FADH2 are formed in the citric acid cycle. Each yields 1.5 molecules of ATP, and that gives us 3 additional ATPs, so that's 11. And then 6 molecules of NADH are formed in the citric acid cycle. Each yields 2.5 molecules of ATP, and that gives us 15 additional ATPs, so that's 26 total in the oxidative phosphorylation, plus 2 from the citric acid cycle, so that's 28, plus another 2 from the glycolysis section, which gives us our 30 ATP molecules.